Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. Time for DC Spotlight for the week of March 8th, 2022. Man, I thought it was a fantastic week. I can't remember this good of a week. I think I enjoyed every book, and that's saying something because we got a couple that I really haven't enjoyed that much, typically. But I thought some of the best issues of even the books that typically I haven't liked. So I don't know. What did you think, Rocky?
Well, there's yeah, no, it actually is pretty good here, and the ones that I'll be, that I have some issues with, they're constructive criticisms. They're not really like, some I might vent a little bit on, but for the most part, they were okay. One I didn't, I just sort of skim read a bit, but we'll get to it. But yeah, overall, I was more content than I usually am for a DC week.
Yeah, it started off for me with Batgirls, and I typically haven't been enjoying Batgirls that much, and I'm like, you know what, I'm not even going to talk about Batgirls anymore because I don't want to say anything that's I know the creators are trying their best, but it's just not working. I was like, but let me like skim it so I have some idea, and I like got sucked in, and I'm like, oh my god, it's the best issue so far. I'm still not a big fan of the art, and it's that whole ink splatter, but we'll get to it when we talk about it. But it does raise an interesting point. I got called out by somebody in a direct message, accusing me of being, well, two things: being negative and disrespectful, but also basically being a brown noser, saying that I sugarcoat my reviews because I'm looking to get interviews. So uh, I I took offense to that. Anybody who knows me knows that that's not what I'm about. DC wants to grant me interviews. They can grant me interviews. If they don't have to.
Yeah.
I will say that 99% of the interviews I get, I don't go through DC. In all the time I've been doing this, I've had like 2 or 3 interviews that I've gone through DC publicity. I reach out to the creators themselves, and if they want to come on and talk to me, they can. And if they don't have to. But I'm not kissing anybody's butt trying to get people on my show. So just putting that out there. Anyway, that being said, let's kick it off with the first book. Man, this was fantastic. I'm disappointed there's only one issue left. It's The Joker. It's issue number 13. James Tynion the fourth is the writer. Giuseppe Camuncoli handles the art on the issue. Cam Smith on inks. Eric Prianto on colors. Tom Napolitano on letters. We do have a punchline backup. Here's another one of those stories I haven't really been enjoying that much. But even this backup this time was, I didn't like it, and I liked it, and I'll explain when I get to it. But it's written by James Tynion along with Sam Johns. The art is by Belen Ortega, colors by Luis Guerrero, letters by Becca Carey. So the main series, again, I don't know what else I can say about how fantastic this is. This is not a story about the Joker, but rather the consequences of the Joker's actions and decisions he's made. And there's a line in here when he's finally confronted by vengeance, and she's talking about how she's compelled to kill him, and he's sort of trying to mess with her head, like he tries to mess with everybody's. And she mentions Jim Gordon. He's like, oh, James, we've had such a wonderful time, him and his ginger kids and whatnot. And that's been what this series has been about. It's been about the way the Joker has affected people, and the ways that he gets under people's skin. We certainly see that here, because he's definitely gotten under Vengeance's skin. But in her defense, and she says this, she's like, I've been programmed to hate you. I've been programmed to want to kill you. And I'm going to do it so that I can be free. And again, the Joker's trying to use that. So it's fascinating. But the whole Samson family, who this issue sort of focused on, it's interesting from that perspective too, how the Joker has affected them, because for all the terrible things the Joker's done throughout his career, and obviously the list is long, he actually, what the Samson family is after him for, he actually didn't have anything to do with. And there's a delicious irony in that. They want to eat him, they want to kill him, they want him to no longer exist, because they think he caused A-Day, and he didn't. but yet they want to punish him for it. So yeah, this is great. It's ramping up. We don't actually see Jim Gordon in this one, but it's ramping up to an interesting finale. The artwork by Kamikoli is fantastic. There's, I think, obviously my favorite panel, probably your favorite panel as well, Rocky, when Vengeance confronts the Samson family and they all go running out, and the old guy's like, "Yeah, show her what the Samson family's made of, Billy," and she literally just punches Billy's head off. Like,
Yeah,
that was awesome. That had me laughing out loud. I was like, hell yeah,
yeah,
get you
yeah.
some Vengeance.
That
I'm a
was
big fan
Buddy. It
of
was Buddy Sampson.
Buddy. Yeah, Buddy. And I'm a big fan of Vengeance. I like Vengeance more than I like Bane. Like, I think, I don't know if the gender bending makes it work, or the fact that she's more conflicted, about what she's doing. I don't know. I find her to be I'm not the biggest Bane fan. He's always been like, his motivations to me aren't, they're not that interesting. I think she's a much more interesting character, so I'm definitely a fan. I like this issue a lot, and I'll talk a little bit about the backup in a second, but I'll give you a chance, Rocky, to talk about the main here.
Yeah, it's funny. This is this issue 13 of the Joker, and frankly, this issue was it's just it's basically just it starts off with showing the banquet, and it's like the billionaire elite has showed up at the Sampsons family home, and it's basically they're cannibals, and they it starts off with them taking out eyeballs and chewing on eyeballs, and it looks like Joker, literally Joker, is on the main menu, and he's being sort of like the Sampson family minions are outside warming up the barbecuing. I can't imagine, although it looks like hamburgers and hot dogs, you think it's probably some kind of human remains of something, and Joker's on the menu, and and basically the issue just consists of the Joker sort of psychologically getting into the head of his captors, and he ultimately escapes. Meanwhile, of course, Samson is giving a speech, and throughout the dialogue, as Samson speaks to all his honored guests that are there to witness them essentially eat the Joker, it's sort of a recap of the series so far. So, in terms of saying, how they got to that point. Meanwhile, Vengeance is well on her way to confront the Joker, and that's ultimately what happens. And of course, Vengeance. Of course, there's that altercation with the Samson family comes out. Vengeance knocks off Buddy Sampson's head. The Grandpa Sampson runs back into the safe house. He needs a safe spot, a safety zone. And of course, Joker escapes. Vengeance confronts the Joker, and ultimately Bane shows up at the end to finally have a dialogue with his daughter, which he confirms. He refers to Vengeance as his daughter, saying it's time to talk, daughter. And so this is kind of a major, sort of a major event. So Bane clearly knows that Vengeance is his daughter, because perhaps that was sort of a question mark, because we weren't sure, was Vengeance was suggested she was just a clone, and because we thought Bane was dead, that if Vengeance was just a clone of Bane, maybe, and we thought Bane was dead, it was not entirely clear if Bane was even aware that he had a daughter. And if she's just a clone of Bane, why would Bane refer to her as his daughter? So maybe she's more than just a clone. Maybe she's, there's more secrets perhaps yet to be revealed in the relationship between Vengeance and Bane. So there's more questions here, but it's the right type of questions that keep me engaged in the story, and I like it. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the next issue.
Yeah, I kind of took it that she was grown in a lab as well,
Yeah.
because that's what it seemed like. But yeah, if he's saying daughter, I mean, you're right to bring it up. Like, maybe they took some of his DNA and they took some female DNA and they put it together and grew her in a lab, or was what we saw in the lab with the immersion tanks or whatever, was that like after she already was like a biological child that Bane had at some point, and they took her and put her in that tank to augment her and her programming or whatever, or was she actually grown? Like, yeah, you're right. We don't actually know the answers to those questions. So
Yeah.
yeah, interesting. The backup, like I said, I liked it and I didn't. So what I liked about it, I mean, part of the problem that I've had with the story all along is it isn't necessarily the story itself in terms of like a technically well put together comic, because I think that we both agree when I can't remember, Sweeney Boo, I think, was the previous artist, and we both of
Yeah.
you and I thought that her aesthetic wasn't really working that well for kind of the darker story they're trying to tell. Her art is really kind of upbeat and happy. So
Yeah.
I think the Bell and Ortega art works better. The pacing has been not the best either at times, and I feel like it's because Tynan and Johns had to stretch this out to make it fit. Okay, the Joker series is going to be 14 issues. We got to make this Punchline backup last 14 issues as well, and it's probably not a story that needed 14 issues
Yeah.
for backup. So it has slowed down and sped up to sort of fit that time frame, and I think that's been an issue as well. But that being said, we are coming down to the end here. We get the verdict in the Punchline trial, and it angered, like, the story in a way. It angered me, like, it elicited an emotional response, and that's what good stories are supposed to do, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I've talked about this at the very beginning, how it felt almost too real and too relatable that somebody like Punchline could do the horrible thing she did, but then, alternate truth or fake news or whatever the term you want to use, where she's going to get away with it,
Yeah.
and that
Mhm.
just, it's so frustrating. And
Especially if
but
you don't like the character.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, and it's not even necessarily that I think she's a terrible character, but I think what she stands for is so despicable. So again, I think even in that way, I haven't given her as fair of a shake as I maybe could have, because again, she's working in terms of what is she supposed to do. She's supposed to be that. She's supposed to be repulsive. She's supposed to be unlikable because of what she stands for. So I think what I liked about this story is we did have some people who previously, and specifically Cullen, Bluebird's brother, Cullen Rowe, who has sort of wised up in a way, right? He's not letting the wool be pulled over his eyes in terms of the relationship he had with the kid who's mixed up with the Royal Flush Gang. Like, it's like, okay, finally, you're acknowledging reality, right? Like, these choices you've been making have just been, for lack of a better word, just stupid. And I get it. People make mistakes, and he's a young kid and maybe doesn't have the life experience. But it's always frustrating for me to read a story where people just keep making dumb decision after dumb decision. And so, again, it's necessary for conflict and drama and all that kind of stuff. So seeing some of these people wise up and more people, kind of falling on that side of, hey, yeah, she's bad, let's, get rid of her. But then the verdict comes in, and I was just, but hopefully, I mean, I would rather her be found guilty, get thrown in jail, than escape. I'd rather that. I just would feel better about myself, feel better about justice in the DCU.
Yeah.
But who knows? Who knows what ultimately will happen? But it looks like she's going to be found not guilty, which is just, yeah. I hate that. I hate that aspect. But again, I think it's doing exactly what Johns and Tynan set out to do, which is elicit that sort of response. And it's, yeah, part of the reason it bugs me is because it's all too real, in terms of real world
Yeah.
people getting away with stuff. It's just frustrating. So anyway, anything
Well,
to add to that, Rock?
well, yeah, just that the execution never worked very well. Dragging this out over 14 issues was a huge mistake because it just never worked. And in fact, the evidence that it didn't work is in this very issue, because essentially the entirety, or largely the bulk of the events that basically lead to that result in a not guilty verdict for Punchline, we were we watched it take place over the previous 13 issues, and now this issue, it's just restating it, a bunch of witnesses on the stand telling us what we've already witnessed. This is so boring, and it is so frustrating to me. And I complained earlier in previous issues that I thought that Cullen and Harper Row and Leslie Tompkins were grossly incompetent, and Bluebird in prison. I thought the whole thing was a gong show. So that I thought it just never made sense. Well, I mean, it was the easiest prediction to make. I hope that Punchline would be found not guilty, because she should be. She's supposed to be a master. I thought, I've said this before, that I think the best version of her character ought to involve her being a master of the media, master of media manipulation. And so if she can't master the media manipulation, then what's the point of the character really, other than just being another than a cheap version of Harley Quinn? So I like the outcome here. I like the fact that she was found not guilty. And I agree with you. It should elicit a viscerally negative response, but that's a good way. She is a villain after all. I just getting here though was pretty choppy, but I like the outcome. I like the outcome, and better late than never, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like, I agree with you, but not. I don't know that I would get there in the same way.
Yeah.
Because you're saying, yeah, they're on the stand and they're they're repeating things we've already seen. I think it would have been better, at least for me. But again, this doesn't get you 14 issues of backup. It would have been better if we skipped most of the stuff, most of the issues, the middle issues that we got. Well, we saw them in prison,
Yeah.
and instead, as these people were giving their testimony on the stand, we got some flashback to show,
Yeah.
panel or two of the riot.
Yep.
Or
Good
panel,
point. Yeah.
it's like, yeah, all the issues that were in prison didn't work for me. I like the trial stuff, but maybe that's just me. I generally like courtroom drama and that kind of thing. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm looking forward to the end of it, and I hope ultimately that. I mean, it sounds like she's gonna be found not guilty. Hopefully, there's some kind of comeuppance. Again, she's a villain. She's gonna escape. She's gonna be out there. I get it, but sometimes it's good to see them get caught, pay some consequence, even if it's only for a couple weeks before the next writer comes along and takes her to do whatever. Anyway, moving on. Justice League versus Legion of Superheroes Part 2, the Gold Lantern Saga. This is from writer Brian Michael Bendis. Art is by Scott Godlewski. Colors by Ryan Cody. Letters by Dave Sharp. Seems like this is going to tie in way more with what Williamson is doing than we even initially thought. How did this one work for you, Rock?
Well, I didn't mind it. I actually, I'm just bringing it up here. We got the Justice League and the Legion of Superheroes essentially dealing with the Great Darkness. The great a portion or an aspect of the Great Darkness has formed a cloud in the 21st century and the 31st century. Last issue ended with Gold Lantern being stranded in the 21st century, while the Justice League is pulled into the 31st century, where of course, the Legion of Superheroes are. This issue starts off it starts off giving us the origin of the Gold Lantern. What Bendis does here, and I think he does it to reasonably good effect. I didn't mind this issue. He does it to reasonably good effect, where juxtaposed against the Justice League waking up in the 31st century and being greeted by their 31st century counterparts. Essentially, we get introduced to kal-el, I believe his name is. He's the Gold Lantern. He's a Gold Lantern, and he's from the planet of. He's originally from the planet called Aploza, and he's actually blind. He's visually blind, and yet he's chosen by the Elders, which are the 31st century version of the Guardians, to essentially wield a Gold Lantern. And they chose him not because he initially didn't want the mantle, because he felt that the old Green Lantern Corps was too militaristic. But the Elders, the future Guardians in the 31st century, they want a different kind of lantern because times are different in the 31st century, and so they choose him. And as we get that sort of history, we get Wonder Woman and Naomi and Oliver Queen waking up in the future. Oliver Queen is greeted by Chameleon Boy, who's disguised as Wonder Woman, and Naomi is greeted by Dawnstar. And there's a lot of dialogue here. This is slow going. Not a lot happens in this issue. What really happens is that you get Bendis is using this opportunity, I think, through the pages of this issue of Justice League to sort of maybe acquaint readers who didn't collect the Legion of Superheroes, acquainting them a little bit with his version of the 31st century. This is New Earth. This is 1,000 years in the future, and it's a very different Earth. It's an Earth with cleaner air. It's basically a newly constructed Earth, but the air is different, and there's allusions to climate change and maybe the environment being better in the future because it is a better world. At one point, Naomi is talking to Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman sort of smiles because she realizes that she's traveled a lot of places, but that the future is a gift, and she expresses sort of contentment that the future is as bright as it is. And of course, leave it to Black Adam and Batman being a little bit more unfriendly in the future. They confront Brainiac 5. They're concerned about this darkness, this dark cloud, this great darkness. And as it appears simultaneously, I guess, in the 31st century above Legion headquarters in Metropolis, as well as near the Hall of Justice in the 21st century, where Gold Lantern still is. And as Gold Lantern approaches this sort of dark cloud, he manages to be able to communicate through his Legion flight ring with Brainiac, who's in the 31st century, and there's some interaction between Black Adam, who confronts the Cloud in the 31st century, and Gold Lantern, who confronts it in the 21st. And and again, in the meantime, we get further information about the surprise of the origins of the Gold Lantern, which I've already discussed, and that's really how it ends. It's sort of setting things up. It's setting things up for the next issue. So these first two issues are really about setup. Brainiac 5 is fearful that it's the end of all things because this great darkness seems to transcend time and space. And so he's really concerned about it. We still don't know what the condition is of Triplicate Girl, who's recovering from being sort of her three aspects being sort of separated from the great darkness in the first issue. But I had some hiccups with the dialogue. I thought that the manner in which some of the communications took place, there people who've had issues with Bendis's dialogue probably still will in parts, but I thought the dialogue was some of Bendis's more perhaps frustrating habits for some of us readers. I think they were minimized here, and I think this is frankly a continuing improvement for Bendis, and I enjoy this issue. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to add to what you said. I thought it worked really well also, particularly as you mentioned with so anybody who didn't read Legion of Superheroes, Bendis he's dropping little hints here, but it doesn't feel like, which he at times can be overly expositional, explaining. I thought it worked and it flowed really well, explaining who the Gold Lantern is. Just enough hints of how different things are in the 31st century. So I thought that all really worked. I thought the fact that the great darkness being a bridge between time and space, between the 21st century and 31st century, was really interesting. The fact that as Black Adam's approaching it, his lightning goes through and almost hits the Gold Lantern. So that's all really interesting. And yeah, I just get this feeling, and it's a feeling I like because it's been one of my complaints about Joshua Williamson building up to Dark Crisis, and feeling like what he's doing is so siloed and not connected to other parts of the DCU. So this is helping that a little bit. As far as the art goes, I like Scott Godlewski's line work even more here. I think he's getting more comfortable with these characters because I liked it more here than I did in the first issue. My only complaint about the art, I don't really care for the muted palette on the colors. I think this is such a traditional superhero comic, and especially leaning into the idea of being connected to Crisis. What's more DC and what's more superheroic than a Crisis? So I'd like the colors to be a little brighter, to have them pop off the page, be a little more primary. I'm not sure why they're choosing to go with this muted palette. I don't know. It's just not working for me. So that's just a personal preference, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on to the next book. This one, again, is really solid. We're up to part 10, so there's 2 parts left. Part 10 of The Tower, Shadows of the Bat, Detective Comics number 1056. Mariko Tamaki is the writer, Amin K. Nahulapin on art, Jordi Belair on colors, Ariana Mayer on letters. So this is pretty interesting. We get a little bit of Mayor Nakano's wife, and I sort of thought that she was always this way, in terms of being like this really timid person who's just gripped with fear and very anxious, maybe some social anxiety there. But we get a little bit of hints at the beginning when she's being interviewed by, I can't remember the reporter's name, Deb Donovan, is that?
Yeah, Deb Donovan,
Deb?
yeah.
Yeah. That this is more of a recent thing with what Nakano's been through with losing his partner, losing his eye, constantly being under threat as the mayor. So we get a little context there, and then it's all action after that. It's all action at the tower with Helena. The Huntress is doing what she can to try to find out where Nightwing is and save him. Stephanie Brown's got kind of the more I guess pedestrian staff that are, or inmates or patients, whatever you want to call them, that aren't the crazed killers, and she's trying to keep them safe in a sub basement. We've got Nightwing, who had been captured by Scarecrow, and Rocky and I both kind of were disappointed that Scarecrow showed up here. Both kind of scarecrowed out at this point. We also learned that Harley Quinn, so the patient that thought she was Harley Quinn, and they were treating her as though she was delusional and thinking she was Harley Quinn, is actually really Harley Quinn undercover, which I kind of sort of thought maybe that was the case anyway, just because
Yeah.
she's every time she was drawn, she looked exactly like Harley Quinn. So I didn't know if that was an art screw up or if it was actually Harley Quinn. So we find out that in this issue, and I like Mariko Tamaki's version of Harley, the voice she gives her. Um, so yeah, again, a little bit of a setup issue, just getting everybody in place. A lot of action, as I said, as members of the Bat family are entering the tower and they're taking out, uh, the party crashers, and they're taking out what villains they can. We see Huntress take out Mr. Freeze in this one. And as Nightwing gets tossed out the window, there's a surprise return of somebody that hasn't been in Gotham. And I'm not exactly sure. It was a cool moment, but I'm not exactly sure how I feel about Batman showing back up. Only because I have both said that we haven't missed him. The story has been working without him,
Yeah.
and I don't know. Does that diminish the rest of what the Bat family's been doing here? Like Batman's got to come in and save the day. So,
Yeah.
but I'm still enjoying it. Just like last time, and again, this isn't a knock against Amin K because I've been a big fan of his art and other things. Kind of similar to my thoughts on Legion Superheroes versus Justice League. I wish the colors were brighter here, but the other part of it is like, man, you know how hard it is to follow even Rice. Like his work is so good, and then to come to this, it's not that this is bad. It's just like anybody's art is going to look less. It's going to look lesser when compared to that. So. But I can't fault the storytelling. He definitely handles the action scenes really good. I especially like the way he laid out the panel or the splash page actually, where Harley takes a mallet to one of the party crashers and he comes like flying out toward the reader. I thought that was a really, really well done page. So yeah, not I don't really have any complaints, specifically about the art. Yeah, that page right there, that's just fantastic. If you're watching this on YouTube, yeah. So, and the backup, yeah, I got a lot to say about the backup too. But what were your thoughts on the main before we move on?
Yeah, well, a couple of the main, it was very interesting. One of the revelations in the main is that it sort of confirms some of the open questions that I think readers have had about the Huntress and the powers that she got from Hugh Vile, that virus. We know we know that it's been unclear exactly. We know that Huntress can sort of see through the eyes of killers, and Huntress herself says in this issue that she basically can see rage, and she can see and sense when somebody near her wants to hurt somebody. And yet it's fallible. Like at one point, the Huntress is actually attacked in this issue, and she can see the rage of the person, of most people that are filled with rage and are about to attack. But for some reason, the one individual that threatened her, she couldn't see the person's rage that was a potential a potential threat to her. So while it seems that Hunters can see potential killers and the rage in other people when they attack other people, the weakness of Huntress's vision is that perhaps she cannot see those who might have rage and express rage toward her. So there's some fallibility there, which she thought was very interesting. And I think that is interesting as a little bit of quirk to that ability, that sort of psychic ability that she seems to have acquired. The other thing is that
I didn't know if it was. I didn't know if it was because it was toward her or because of maybe what the intentions of the person. She's like, she can see when somebody wants to commit violence, but the guy, he even said, he goes, I don't want to do it. I have to do it. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's the motivation.
It could be. That's a good point.
I didn't think of it the way that you did, but yeah, it I could see it going that way too. Could be either one.
Yeah, it could. So, but like I said, it's sort of interesting, and I kind of like that vagueness. I mean, because it's sort of tropey for us readers always to know. We're always so picky. We want to know what the powers are, so we feel that we need to know what the powers are. I kind of like the idea that we're not entirely sure exactly how Huntress's sort of abilities now work this, and so it's kind of, we can learn as she does. So I think that's an interesting little quirk there. There is a cliffhanger here. It's unclear. The Anna Volshin at the end of this issue either shoots Psycho Pirate or Mayor Nakano's wife. and that's very interesting. I thought that one thing Marika Tamaki did very effectively here is that there was some sympathy that I had for Psycho Pirate. Psycho Pirate, unlike Dr. Tobias Ware, who was using Psycho Pirate to manipulate and control the patients, it would appear that Psycho Pirate's intention he really did have a noble motive. He really did want to help them. I'm assuming Psycho Pirate isn't lying. I think Roger Hayden had that sincere desire to actually help them. Now, at least that's what he tells Mare Nakano, and he doesn't try to harm her. So I think that he's actually being remorseful and is being truthful when he tells her that. Maybe he isn't, but I suspect he is. But it's all thrown for a loop at the end where Anna Volshin comes in, and Anna Volshin, along with the other inmates, knows that somebody else was controlling them. So did Anna Volshin, in revenge, kill Psycho Pirate? Or did she kill Mare Nakano, or do they want to use Psycho Pirate for their own uses to complete their takeover of Arkham Tower? So we'll have to wait for, I guess, part 11 to find out. But I quite enjoyed this this issue. I think Tamaki's done a good job building the suspense, and we actually had Tim Drake show up as well, and with a spoiler, and there was actions on all front in this issue, and I thought it was very well laid out.
Yeah, not a surprise. I mean, Psycho Pirate's he's never been portrayed as like this outright evil guy. Like in a way, he's somebody that's always being manipulated by somebody else. Because even in Crisis on Infinite Earths, he's manipulated. He doesn't have strong character, and I don't mean that like people haven't established his character. His character and his personality are well established. I mean, it's established as him being a weak person. He doesn't have a strong personality. He doesn't stand up for himself. So he's easily able to be manipulated. And if I had to guess who Anna Volshin shot, she didn't shoot either one of them. It was a warning shot that went right between the two. That's my prediction.
Yeah.
But yeah, if Mayor Nakano's wife did get killed, yeah, I mean, how much can one guy? I could see him just riding off into the sunset and being like, "That's it. I'm done with Gotham." We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
But as far as the backup goes, this House of Gotham, I've never felt like the title was more appropriate than for this issue. Written by Matthew Rosenberg, Fernando Blanco is the artist, Jordi Belair on colors, Rob Lee on letters. What Matthew Rosenberg and Fernando Blanco have done here in tying in this kid whose name we still don't know, this redheaded kid, tying it in with Gotham and kind of the people that are left behind, the people that have suffered trauma. He's almost, he confronts Batman in this issue, and it's almost like he doesn't come right out and say, "This is your fault," but he lays it all at Batman's feet. Like, what do you expect us to do? You're here to stop me. You say I'm leading this criminal gang. I'm just trying to help people. I'm just trying to help the people that even you seem to have forgotten. And the way that Rosenberg has managed to weave this kid's story into the big events of Gotham, from Nightfall to Night Quest to No Man's Land here, I think is really fantastic. And it leans into that idea of a house of Gotham, like Gotham as this living organism of society where things are not right. You know what I mean? Like that whole idea of, hey, before you go pointing your finger at somebody else, make sure your own house is in order. In a way, that's what this kid is doing to Batman. And so I really, really am impressed with what Rosenberg and Blanco are doing here. And I would not be surprised. My prediction is that as fun and as action-packed as the Shadows of the Bat storyline has been with Arkham Tower, I have a feeling that this House of Gotham story may end up having more long-term consequences and impact than that main story. I could see that being the case.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed it. And the Fernando Blanco art has been fantastic, as it has been throughout. And this is a case where this darker, more muddy, muted color palette that Jordi Belair has been giving us really works for the tone of the story that Rosenberg has been telling throughout. So I'm a big fan.
Masterfully done by Rosenberg over these 10 issues in this backup. This is a kid. We've been on the journey from this kid from when he was a young infant, losing his parents, being traumatized by ultimately the Joker, but also Batman in that same evening that his parents were killed. He through it all, he's had experience with his first psychiatrist. His first therapy was with Dr. Harleen Quinzel. He's become familiar over the years of his young adult life, from when he was a child to a young adult. He's become familiar with the Huntress, Poison Ivy, Killer Croc, multiple members of the Rogues Gallery, Bane, Azaz. He's been in Arkham Asylum. He was, practically, Arkham Asylum was practically his de facto foster home. This kid has seen it all, and yet, remarkably, this kid, this young adult, has managed to keep his own moral compass, because Batman at the end leaves him alone. He stands up. This is in the middle of no man's land, and he's formed his own little gang, but of survivors, and they're just looking for food. And the Huntress in this issue basically sets up this redheaded kid that we wonder who, he's a redheaded adult now with a beard, sets him up for Batman to take him down. But Batman realizes that this kid is a survivor, and Batman recognizes the kid, and this kid stands up for himself, and Batman respects that. And let's be blunt here, this kid hasn't actually done anything wrong. He hasn't actually, I don't know, has he killed anybody in the first 10 issues? Maybe I forget, but he's had a rough life.
No,
he's
he's
never,
yeah.
So it's going to be really, really curious. Is this kid going to be a Gotham hero? Is he going to be an anti-hero? Is he going to be a bad guy? I don't know, but Rosenberg, he's got me really interested into what? Who is this kid? And, not only is this story fantastic, but speculator alert, guys. I mean, none of these speculators are buying DC comics now, but I tell you what, this is, Rosenberg has done a hell of a job here, as you said, utilizing established, evergreen Batman history from all Batman major events, and this kid was there for it all. And so, man, I'm really looking forward. I mean, this is the way you build suspense as to who is this kid? Who is this kid? I mean, we're all wondering, like, who is this kid? I mean, and frankly, no one's talking about this backup, but to me, this is by far the most interesting, and the art is just fantastic. I mean, Fernando Blanco's on the art, just fantastic. I love the illustration of Huntress and Batman here, but very well done, very impressive.
Yep, I agree 100%. Yeah, it'll be interesting if the first issue of Shadows of the Bat ends up being worth a lot because it's the first appearance of this kid.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll go hunting it down for a completely different reason.
That's exactly right.
Okay, up next we have Gotham, or Future State Gotham, issue number 11. Written solo this time. No Joshua Williamson. Dennis Culver's going solo on it. Art is by somebody named Geoffo, Geoffo. Lettered by Troy Petrie. It does have a backup that is by written and drawn by Raphael Albuquerque, and it is a reprint again. But at least this time they reprinted a story from way back in 2013. I think it was in Batman Black and White number 2 or number 3 from way back then. So I do appreciate that. I like that. Hey, if you're going to reprint one, at least they're reprinting one that's almost 10 years old. But what were your thoughts on the main story, Rock?
Unfortunately, I hate to say this, I'm gonna have to plead the fifth. I just skim it. I'm sorry, I can't comment much about it. I'm sorry. Of all the comics I've read this week, this one got short shrift for me, and my apologies to Dennis Culver, because honestly, every time I've read this, he's gotten better and better on this, and for a title that I started off very much criticizing as to why it exists. I do think that this is, I do like punchline in here, and the cast of characters works very well up until this point, and the action here looks pretty good, but unfortunately, I didn't read it to fully give it the proper review it deserves, so you'll have to help me out.
All right, well, it is pretty interesting that for the first time we get some color on one of the pages, and it made me think, have they been going black and white this entire time just to have this one page stand out in color? I don't think that that's actually the case. But I did appreciate that we got color finally. I will also say that I like Jeffo's art. It's less of a manga style and more of a finished style. It feels less unpolished. And so I enjoyed the art much more. And I enjoyed the story more as well. I mean, we still have Harley Quinn and the Jace Fox version of Batman and Red Hood as what do they call him? Agent Red or whatever he is working for the
Peacekeeper
magistrate.
Red or
Peacekeeper Red. There you go.
Peacekeeper Red. Yeah.
Yeah. They're still trying to take out the Joker bots that are this, this new version of the Joker, and they're trying to get Tobias Whale, who apparently knows something about the boss that's causing all these problems. Probably the one that caused the big explosion in the shape of a bat. We know it's either the old Hush or some new version of Hush, but they don't. They're trying to find out. They're trying to get Tobias Whale to safety, while this new Joker, who is kind of seems to be in the employ of this either old Hush or new Hush, is trying to take him out. So that's sort of the bulk of the story. But then there's the side plot that's going on that we saw a little bit of last issue, where Talia al Ghul is going to be supplying Nightwing with Brain, I think they call it, right? Brane,
Yeah.
which is the basically the psychological equivalent of Venom, right? Like the Venom serum that Bane takes that augments his body. Brain is supposed to augment your mind. So we see Nightwing get hooked up with like this uh, gauntlet on his arm that then has a hose that goes to the back of his neck, and he can click it up to 3 times, I think, every 20 minutes. More than that is not recommended, but it's supposed to, basically boost his brain. And Talia wants Nightwing to do this because they don't know where Damien is. So her part of it is, hey, I'm going to help Nightwing out so that she can, or Nightwing can go rescue my son. So that's where the color goes in when Nightwing finally takes this brain and gets all this information kind of overload, and we see some color. But then unfortunately he passes out, maybe a little too much too fast, and Talia has to call for her friend saying, medics, keep this man alive if you value your own life. So she's obviously worried about what that entails if he dies. So and I also will say, we both commented on the fact that they specifically called out Talia as a beautiful woman in the previous issue, and the art just did not reflect that.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that Joffo, like, at least she looks feminine here. At least
Yeah.
she's drawn like a woman.
Finally. Yes.
Uh, and then the other fun aspect of it that I really enjoyed was Peacekeeper Red and Jace Fox go to one of the satellite bat caves that Batman has hidden throughout the city that apparently Jason Todd has been discovering and getting back online, kind of cleaning them up and getting them power and whatnot. And they both get some armor to go try to take out the Joker. So I appreciated that as well, because, and this is really kind of leaning into the kind of Asian influences, East Asian manga influences here. We see as Red Hood is, launches off his bike, jumps off some stairs or what have you on his bike, and he's in the air approaching the next Joker. And then the bike transforms under him and around him and becomes the armor that he's wearing when he goes to beat on the Joker.
It looks pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's again, I was like, well, that's about as, anime as you can get, thinking about anime cartoons I watched when I was a kid. So I thought that was a pretty cool idea as well. So yeah, a lot of action. I'm trying to put aside my main complaint I have about this series and just try to enjoy it for what it is, because there's a lot of action and some fun ideas here. But now that, again, we know the magistrate doesn't come to pass, they don't gain power in Gotham. So what is the point of the story? I'm just trying to enjoy it for what it is. But yeah, I mean, that one page with the colored art looks pretty good. So again, DC, can you just color the whole book? I would think I would enjoy it more. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm all about black and white art when there's like great line work and inking and whatnot, textures to look at and see what people have done. But I don't know. This is not that. This art is not that type of art. I think that really shines best in black and white. So
it actually is interesting, that color page looks fantastic, and it's just when he's experimenting with that drug and the idea that he sees colors better because of the drug. It works. That it fits the narrative extremely well. That particular page.
Yeah, and again, a lot of impact because it's been the only color page throughout the story. So I don't know. Maybe they know what they're doing. The backup is I mean, we don't have enough Scarecrow content. It's Scarecrow making Batman think he's dead, and he's traveling through some limbo, trying to decide if he's going to go to heaven or hell. It's Raphael Albuquerque. This is art that looks fantastic in black and white. If you've never read the story, it's worth your time. So check it out. Okay, let's move on. Up next, we have Batgirls #4, written by Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad, Jorge Corona on art, Sarah Stern on colors, Becca Carey on letters. So like I mentioned, I wasn't planning on reading this whole thing. I was just going to skim it, but I got sucked in. It feels like a little bit of forward momentum, because I feel like at times the story has really dragged on. But we got a lot of different aspects. We got to see some of the neighbors. We got to see both Cass and Stephanie Brown in action. We know that these remnants, I guess I'll call them, of the Magistrate, the Saints, are still tracking them. We get a little bit of what I thought or suspected all along, proof that this guy from Barbara's past is, not who he pretends to be. And in fact, he's what does Stephanie call him? Charles. It doesn't matter if he's a total babe and my ex, because he's also a genius psychotherapist, Dante. If that's not a mouthful. Yeah. So yeah, Charles Dante dated Barbara back in college, and I don't know. It just, like, from the moment he showed up, there was just something about him where he went, well, there's the bad guy, and sure enough, that's what we find out. He's this guy named Spellbinder, and he's been behind everything that's been going on all along, basically. So how that's all going to play out, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But I just felt like we got some forward momentum here. We're getting some answers to some of the questions we've had. We're not treading water anymore, so I did appreciate that. I still don't care for the art, though. It just, every page having that dark ink splatter over it, it's I don't know, maybe it's my type A personality. I like things nice and neat, and it just makes it look messy. It's just not my favorite. So, and it's unfortunate, because I mean, I've read other things that Jorge Corona has done, specifically Middle West, that he did with Scotty Young, that I absolutely loved, because I think that his art aesthetic suits that story a little more. To me, this is more of a traditional superhero story, the way it's been played out, maybe with a little bit of horror themes to it, or horror undertones. But I like my superhero art to be, a little cleaner than this. So again, it's just a personal preference. It's no knock against the storytelling, because Jorge is a fantastic sequential storyteller. But yeah, I like this issue. It's probably the best issue of the series so far for me. So what do you think, Rob?
Well, first I want to give a shout out to Cloonrad. I think that's got to be the coolest name for a creative team collaboration. Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad. Cloonrad. I don't think I've ever come out and said it, but it's a very cool name. I got to give him credit here, and because I was very upfront when this series began that this is not my Cassandra Cain. And so I have a bias against the original iteration of Cassandra Cain, but I got to get over it. And the fact of the matter is that the Jose Corona art here is really fantastic. He's really good on the details. If the details in the art, I think the coloring, I think they really, I'm getting used to the art, and I think it works. He's not afraid to experiment, and this is a good. The story that Cloonrad that they're telling, it works. So many characters are in this issue, and it all seems to be put together fairly well. I really love the banter between the dialogue between Stephanie and Cassandra. It's pretty good. It's getting better. There's humor here. There's a couple of moments where I even laughed when they're talking about the difference between bluffing and lying. I love that they call their car Bondo, their car, because last issue we had Babs give them like they're like almost like unicycles to drive around in, and of course they abandon that and they have this dilapidated, almost kind of car with a cool engine. They call it Bondo. Uh, we have a villain here, Tudor. We still have Seer, who is like the evil oracle that's around. We have Charles Dante, the art therapist that Babs is checking out, but he's really spellbinder. We also have a villain going around, the Hill Ripper. And meanwhile, we still have the Saints of Valentine and Tarsus and this other group that are following the Batgirls around. And there's a lot of moving parts here. Meanwhile, there's still like the rear window sort of Alfred Hitchcockian sort of idea that the Batgirls, Steph and Cassandra, are following around this Mr. Green because they find him suspicious. They're following him around in different libraries, and even though he's not really done anything wrong, they suspect he's done something wrong. And we're as readers, we're really getting to be familiar with the neighborhood here. Cloonan have done Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad have done a good job here of getting us familiar with the Batgirls neighborhood and just their rapport, their friendship, and just the neighborhood that they reside in. And this is only it only took them 4 issues to do this so far, and they're pulling me into this world. And I'm not the type of reader I think that they want to attract, and yet I find myself oddly compelled and interested in the world that they're setting up. So I want to give them props for that. And I'm actually really curious to see why the Saints are after the Batgirls. I'm not clear about that. This Charles Dante, the Spellbinder, what's his true motivation? What's going on? I'm curious here, and so I gotta, I'm in this. I'm really curious to see where this goes and if this is going to be resolved in the next couple issues. But pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, it's so interesting too, because we really thought this was going to be more aimed at younger readers, but yeah, I think it's a little more sophisticated than that. So
yeah, it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely working. Okay, up next we have Batman Urban Legends, 4 stories, the end of 2 of them. So first we have Batman and Zatanna in Blood and Bound to Our Will, rather. Part 3 of 6 from writer Vita Ayala. Nicola Sameggia on art, Nick Filardi on colors, Steve Wands on letters. And then the final part of White Witch, Stigma, part 3 of 3. Ram V is the writer. Anand RK is the artist. John Pearson on colors. Aditya Bidikar on letters. Eternity, that's Kid Eternity and Eternity in Gotham, part 3 of 3 from Mohale Moshigo. Art Arist Dine, Deyn, hope I'm saying that right, does the art and colors, and Seda Timofanti on letters. And then Ace the Bat Hound and Hounded, part 3 of 6 from writer Mark Russell. Carl Mostert on art, Trish Mulvihill on colors, Steve Wands on letters. So yeah, you're up first, Rocky. Talk about any or all. What'd you think?
Well, I enjoyed the Batman Urban Legend, the first one, Batman and Zatanna, Bound to Our Will, Part 3, written by Vita Ayala, Nicola Mazija on the art. I was actually, I'm enjoying this one. The continuing sort of saga of the sort of focusing on the relationship between Batman and Zatanna. How in the past in the past, Batman, Bruce, and Zatanna maybe had a little bit of a fling. They had some feelings for each other. And at one point, Zatanna cast a spell. And unbeknownst to her, this created sort of a magical imbalance. And this Celeste character, this sort of witch-like character called Celeste, is sort of pulls in her son named Eos, who's been trapped for 300 years. And he's, so Celeste and Eos are these magical evil entities sort of brought into our world, and there's an imbalance there created by a spell that Zatanna did while her, in her younger years, when she, her and Bruce Wayne may have had a little bit of a thing going on. And they use Vita Ayala pulls in John Constantine here, and naturally they need John Constantine's help because this Celeste character and Eos, they're up to no good. They're arguably bringing in sort of an apocalyptic event of some kind, or at least they're magical bad guys. That's all you really need to know. Because frankly, the most compelling part of this story that I really like is it's just a great character work that Vita Ayala does with John Constantine, who's flirting with Batman. Of course, he's for John Constantine, either sex can make him happy. I mean, and of course he flirts with Batman just to get under Batman's goat. And of course, him and Zatanna is his ongoing /former/ love her at different points in time. I thought the dialogue here was excellent. Full props to Vita Ayala. And I thought maybe maybe some of Batman's dialogue was a little off in parts, but for the most part, I was I really was impressed. Sis Mazija's art was fantastic. Some of the magical work that John Constantine does, creating a magical bubble around their work as they're trying to work through what exactly has happened. I think it works very very well. We get to learn more about we meet this new character called Jackie Day, and we actually get to see this brand new character. This new character Jackie Day. We see this young kid from age 4 up to age 28, and he's a kind soul, but he's being possessed by this Eos. And we learn quite a bit about this Jackie Day, about his moral compass, and he's actually a good kid, but he's slowly being possessed by this Eos character, and I think we're told that for a reason. There's something called magical homeostasis, which is something that has been disrupted, and that John Constantine says that this imbalance in magic has to be balanced, and the way to fix it is that Batman and Zatanna. It's something to do about their relationship and in the past that they need to work out and maybe fix that imbalance. We're only in part 3 of a 6 parts story here, and I'm really intrigued. I love the character work, and frankly, I don't even care who the bad guys are. I love the Constantine, Batman, and Zatanna and their interactions here. We're actually getting to learn something. For once, I'm actually curious because I don't really know a lot about Batman and Zatanna. I know it's always been teased, and I kind of like the fact that we got a little bit of a quasi. I know it's not a love triangle, but the tension between the three here is kind of interesting. Not obviously between Constantine and Batman, but the teasing that goes on and the fact that Batman doesn't necessarily like Constantine. Batman says to him, I've lost count on one hand how many times you've gotten us into trouble, and almost ended the world because of your smartass ways." He says that to Constantine. Again, just really great. Vita Ayala knows these characters, and it shows. And I quite enjoyed this story. What about you, what about yourself?
Yeah, I echo a lot of what you said. I mean, getting the background for this Jackie character is interesting because what's the point? The fact that he's taken over by Eos, he's completely subsumed. So I got to think that maybe something about the fact that he, in the end, will come back around to, I don't know, self exercise
Yeah,
uh, Eos or something. So yeah, not really sure, but yeah, the action's ramping up. The triangle between the three heroes, very interesting. I mean, just the dynamic that Vita gives us between Batman and Zatanna throughout has been really interesting. I know traditionally it's all about Batman and Selina, and certainly that relationship between Batman and Catwoman has been almost shoved down our throats by DC in recent years with the Tom King series, and um, but I never have really thought that was a. I've never been a fan of Batman being together with Selina. I know she's much more of an anti-hero now, and that's fine or whatever. But I think the idea of Bruce and Zatanna together is much more interesting to me, just because they are so different. I mean, in a lot of ways, Batman and Catwoman they're so similar, right? They're street level characters. They don't have superpowers. They operate at night, kind of seedy underbelly of Gotham City, that kind of thing. There's a lot in common there. Zatanna and Batman couldn't be further apart, right? She's all about magic. He's grounded in reality. Like there's a lot of interesting story ideas there. So I would be much more interested in that, even more so than seeing Zatanna with John Constantine, because Zatanna and John Constantine, it's kind of the same thing as Bruce and Selina, right? They're so similar. They're both magic users and that kind of thing. Although she's a sweetheart and he's a total prick, but you get what I'm saying. That kind of like different worlds if you go with Bruce and Zatanna. So,
yeah,
but yeah, I'm curious. This story's been building to something, and it feels like we've gotten a lot of story. And I think you made that point. We've gotten a lot of story. And we're only halfway there. Got 3 issues to go. So I guess we'll see. I'll just talk real quick about the next one, the White Witch Stigma #3. Yeah, I'm still not a big fan of the Anand RK art. It's very impressionistic. It's very watercolor. It's okay. Um, I do feel like Ramvi did exactly what he set out to do in terms of giving us a little bit of origin story and context for White Witch. Um, but I think just selfishly, I'm sad that he left Catwoman because I think we would have gotten a lot more of White Witch and an even greater understanding of who she is as a character because I think she's very interesting, has a lot of potential. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, you can only write so many books a month, and that was the one that had to give for him. So, but I did ultimately enjoy the story. I was a little iffy on it after the second part, but yeah, I think it works. And it just makes me want to know more about her. So I think in that way it was successful. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's revealed here, which was kind of revealed already, but that's the name of the girl that would be the woman who would become White Witch. She's the result of something called a Thysanus cloning program, or Thysanus cloning program. I'm sure I'm butchering that. Uh, and she and she keeps being cloned, but she's always flawed, and she's every time she's cloned, she remembers more of her original memories, and Simon Saint continues to kill her every time there's an imperfect clone, or what Simon Saint deems to be an imperfect clone. He kills the clone, but every time she's cloned, she remembers more and more of her memories, and ultimately, this is the third and final chapter, and basically it just tells us it's her love for Ghostmaker. Her and Ghostmaker had a passionate love affair at some point, and it's her love for Ghostmaker, and that emotional connection that sort of helps her salvage her memories, and we saw that at the tail end of Fear State, where White Witch was actually battling Ghostmaker, and then Latro, the Ghostmaker, recognizes Ree, and sort of like she freezes, and so this sort of, now we know why. It's because she's part of the Simon Saint's program. And I'm not sure. She says at the end, she makes a promise to Simon Saint at the end here that she will kill Simon Saint one day. And we know Simon Saint was killed. Did White Witch kill Simon Saint? Who killed Simon Saint? Do you remember? I can't remember.
It wasn't White Witch, but
Yeah, I don't think it
I'm
was.
not convinced that I'm not convinced. Didn't we see something that gave a hint that Simon Saint might still be alive? Because
Possibly,
he's
yeah.
like they took him to prison, and then supposedly he was killed in prison. But then we saw something else later that may have been that was their way to get him out of prison. I don't know. I can't remember, to be honest with you, but I
Yeah.
don't think he's dead.
Yeah, well, it seems interesting that Ree here promising, one day I will have enough memory back and I will kill you. And Simon saying, he has a look of almost terror on his face in the final panel. And I know, well, I can't remember. I guess we review too many damn comics. We can't remember who died and who lives in the DC universe anymore. But, like you said, even if he is dead, I'm sure Simon Saint will come back, and Ree, the White Witch, will have her chance for revenge inevitably. But you want to? Do you want me to talk about the final?
Go ahead and dive into Eternity.
Yeah, the story with Kid Eternity. This is the final chapter of Kid Eternity. Writer Mihail Moshigo, with art by Arist Dane. And I thought this was an interesting ending. I learned something more about Kid Eternity that I didn't know. This is an individual who he can. I We know that essentially, as he can see through and communicate with dead people once they've been murdered, and he helps solve their cases. But apparently, I didn't know the ghosts that he sees of the dead, they disappear after 24 hours. So he's only got 24 hours to solve their murders. So he's got to act quick. In this particular case, last issue, it ended with us believing that this one character, named Regina, was responsible for the killing of the was responsible for killing the victim named Kate. But as it turns out, a very interesting twist here, well done by Mahali Mashigo. A twist I never saw coming, and that is, it reminded me of the that Bruce Willis movie. I See Dead People. The prime suspect, Regina, who I thought Regina was the killer, ends up being another ghost. So both Regina and Kate are ghosts, and actually there's a little misdirection at the end, and Kid Eternity utilizes some of his own, forensics, and with the help of some cat hairs, they eventually identify the actual killer. And I thought it was very well done. I thought it, and I think this was only 3 chapters, I think 3 chapters long. I was actually quite impressed with this. And again, I like the art. We got some more history. We learned more about Kid Eternity's origins, about the death of his father, and how and his experiences in the afterlife when his dad died, in the origins of how it's still somewhat of a mystery to him why he was chosen to have the abilities that he does. But I thought it was very well done, and in 3 short issues, I was quite impressed. I enjoyed this, and I wasn't, even though I thought the whole Kid Eternity concept has maybe been, we've seen it done before. I'm actually interested in this kid, and I would like to see. I think we have too many Bat characters. I think this kid is different enough. I would like to see him interact more with the Bat family and have maybe fewer Robins and throw in Kid Eternity, if I'm honest. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that. I mean, I said as much when we read part one. I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't mind him as a supporting character in Batman. Like he's uh, the medical examiner or whatever. So if Batman's investigating a murder and he's got to go to the morgue and check out the body, it'd be great to see Kid Eternity show up, team up with Batman, work with somebody like a Bluebird or Stephanie Brown from time to time. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. What's interesting about the story is we get all the clues and we get all the answers, and we're told that, okay, well, maybe the person that really perpetrated the crime is eventually going to pay, but then it just ends, and it doesn't. It kind of leaves it. There's a little bit of the story that's left to be determined by Mashigo, which I thought was interesting, because we're basically told that this this guy who was the superintendent of the building, when he killed this woman, he was possessed by his wife, so he's not really responsible. And you almost think, okay, so is Kid Eternity gonna go and like get him out of jail and find some, but no, it's just okay, it's over. He's not really
Yeah,
responsible. Maybe he's a bad guy anyway.
yeah.
Maybe he deserved it. Maybe more to come somewhere else in another story. I don't know, but I just thought that was interesting, because I almost felt like, well, oh, the story's, because you think, okay, well, once you find out who's responsible, the story's going to wind down, and then you find out that the other girl, Regina's dead as well, and then it's like, okay, well, is the story over? Is it not? And then no, it turns out it's not over, but then we're going to end it anyway. So yeah, I don't know. The ending was a little abrupt. I still enjoyed it very, very much.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, even the fact that this guy in the uh, dark suit, black tie, white button down shirt shows up to take Regina away, and then gives Kid Eternity a warning. Stay away from the dead. They're mine. You've been warned. I'm like, man, yeah, I've never read any Kid Eternity stuff before this, but this definitely makes me want to read some more Kid Eternity stuff. So, the last story, I don't have a whole lot to say about it, because it felt like a lot of setup. Um, these animals they're interesting, but we didn't get any of their story in this issue. I mean, they moved from one place to another, but we didn't, like last issue really focused on them. This one is kind of narrated by this Russian mobster, uh, who is the one that has
Yeah.
Bruce Wayne right now, has Batman trapped, and is going to
Yeah.
apparently auction him off. Um, and there's some context in the story he tells, which I thought was interesting. He tells this story about a puppy that was given to a lion for the lion to eat, and the lion ends up making friends with the puppy, and then eventually the puppy dies, and the lion's sad. And he's telling the story to one of his underlings who's American, and she's like, "What's the point of that story?" And the guy's like, "I don't know. You Americans, your stories always have to have a point." Like, yeah, you're right, dude. Stories are supposed to have a point. That's what a story is. So yeah, I did appreciate that from Mark Russell, because I know different cultures, 100%. Like sometimes it's okay to tell a story. It just reminds you how pointless life is, because you're telling a pointless story. Like, come on, man. So I did appreciate that. It's a good story. I'm interested to see how it winds up. There's still 3 issues left of this, and I have a feeling, based on the way this one ends, that we're going to get a lot of action next time, because we didn't get a whole lot of action in this one. So I'm looking forward to that. And the last thing I'll say is I still love the idea of a dog named Lix Luthor. That's
Yeah.
just a fantastic name. So, what
Well,
do you think about this one?
Well, I enjoyed this. I think the idea of Ace the Bat Hound is awesome. Lex Luthor is actually the villain dog. So it's actually established here. Lex Luthor, the dog, is actually helping Mr. Swan apprehend because all those pets, because Ace and the Bat Hound, all the pets, they escaped the pet cemetery that's run by Mr. Schwann, and he wants to get them back because Mr. Schwann has revealed that the pet cemetery is actually being used. He actually uses it to the bury the like used by the mafia to bury their dead. And the result of that is that he's afraid that if the dogs, they got to find the pets that escaped to kill him, because if they come back with the authorities, he's afraid that they might discover and dig up and discover that there's actually buried people there that have been murdered. And so that's interesting. And meanwhile, of course, this Colonel Andrei Tarkov is this this Russian guy who's managed to acquire, and he's going to auction off Batman. And there's a great scene here where where he tries to take off Batman's mask. And kudos to Mark Russell, because we've seen elements of this before where guys have tried to take off Batman's mask, but Batman has almost like he has like built-in electrical shock. If you try to take his mask off, you can get electrocuted. It's almost like a built-in heat vision if you try to take the mask off as well. And there's also great dialogue, and you alluded to it before, where this Tarkov character, is telling this story about the lion and a puppy, and about the lion never killed a puppy because the puppy wasn't afraid of him, because the puppy thought the lion wanted to play, and the lion grew to love the puppy died, and then the lion died almost in a state of depression. What's the point of the story? Well, Mark Russell, the character Tarkov, says, well, why does every story have to have a point, you stupid Americans, right? But there is kind of a point, and that is that life rarely gives out puppies. And that's actually stated. So if you're a lion, be a lion. Life rarely gives out puppies. Life isn't fair. Get over it. And I guess that's the lesson. If you have to get something out of that story, I guess that's the only thing you can take. But in the meantime, this is building to a head here, because obviously Ace, the Bat Hound, is moving toward. He's getting closer and closer to where Batman is. Batman himself is eventually going to escape. This is coming to a head here, and I have no idea how this is going to end. But I've been enjoying the ride so far.
Yeah, same. It's been fun. So, okay. Up next, we have the second part of World's Finest Sons, which is in Nightwing. The first part was in Nightwing. Second part here is in Superman, Son of Kal-El #9 from writer Tom Taylor. Bruno Redondo does the pencils. Bruno Redondo and Wade Von Grobiger on inks. Adriana Lucas on colors. Wes Abbott on letters. You'll forgive me for calling it Nightwing. This is Superman, but all along, even now, as I was reading it, I was thinking, yeah, this is an issue of Nightwing, right? Because it's got Tom Taylor writing and Bruno Redondo pencils. That's an issue of Nightwing. But yeah, what were your thoughts here?
This was very good. I really like the Redondo art. Bruno Redondo's art is just fantastic. Tom Taylor does a good job of again, another entertaining story. There isn't necessarily a lot of movement on the story. This is kind of a slower paced story narrative that continues. Well, obviously, like you, I'm almost kind of confusing my Nightwing comic with my Superman Son of Kal-El comic, but basically Henry Bendix is utilizing the Rising, his group of metahumans, to essentially try to set up John Kent, to set up Superboy to take the fall for a murder. And that's what this whole issue tries to orchestrate. And that's what this is. This is a massive PR campaign to make superheroes look bad. And it's clear that Henry Bendix, by the end of this, wants to orchestrate events to make John Kent look like John Kent is guilty of a murder that Henry Bendix himself orchestrates by essentially executing one of his own men while they're in front of Superman. But before we get there, there's this, the Nightwing is on an investigation. He's investigating the Rising, and eventually Nightwing, Dick Grayson, he attracts the attention of all of the metahumans that were responsible for killing Risk, a former Titan, last issue. And there's just a great scene where Nightwing just, very confidently goes to the roof and sets up these three metahumans that have been created by Henry Bendix in his program. And it's so funny. They throw Nightwing off the roof. Nightwing isn't even afraid, of course. And it's a perfect setup. There's just a fantastic transition. It shows the one scene with with them throwing Nightwing off the roof, and then all of a sudden, the next page you see, Superman flying to the roof while while Dick Grayson, Nightwing, relaxes as he's falling toward the ground, not at all worried. And Superboy, of course, or I'm sorry, Superman, gets down to business and begins to interrogate them, takes them out rather handily, and one of them foolishly tries to headbutt Superman, and Nightwing makes a joke about it. So it's sort of Tom Taylor does a good job. He knows these characters. The dialogue is good. The banter is good. The art by Redondo is fantastic. Not a lot happens in the issue, so if I'm going to be critical, I wish there'd have been a little bit more movement. But after this is done, they go back to Lois Lane's. I'm assuming it's John Kent's apartment or Lois Lane, and there's a good heart to heart between some bonding between Dick Grayson and John Kent. John Kent confides in Dick Grayson. He says something very interesting. He says that he was actually gone for 5 years on another Earth. So we all thought it was 7 years. Apparently, he was only on Earth 3 for 5 years, from when he was 11 to 16 years old. So Tom Taylor is clarifying for us readers in this sort of new omniverse exactly how long John Kent spent on this other Earth, and in those formative years where he aged up. And Dick Grayson offers Lois Lane a job at the Truth, and Lois Lane is going to consider it, and so that's interesting. John Kent confides in Nightwing that when he was trapped on Earth 3 in that volcano and terrorized psychologically by Ultraman, I mean, he kept thinking and hoping that he would be rescued by Dick Grayson, which is a callback to that scene we got last issue where John Kent remembered being found and found by Nightwing and Batman, or then an older Dick Grayson Robin, where he juggled for a young John Kent. And it was a nice callback here. So everything that Tom Taylor has scripted here has been very intentional, very deliberate, and it's his own way. He loves to do fan service, and Tom Taylor, we know, likes to tug at the heartstrings and create those emotional moments of bonding and rapport, which I think he does to great effect in this issue. So I enjoyed it. What do you think?
Yeah, this was actually my favorite comic of the week. You're right; it doesn't give a whole lot of forward momentum in the story of Bendix and Lex Luthor and the Rising, but what it has is a lot of humor and a lot of heart. And I think that's exactly what Taylor and Redondo set out to do. I mean, that's usually what they are doing over in their Nightwing book. So the art is fantastic, whether it's double exposure from Bruno Redondo, which he does many times, or I shouldn't say double, but multiple exposure, where it's the same. It's one panel, but we see Nightwing in that panel multiple times, showing movement. Something Mikhail Yanin does to great effect. Nightwing when he gets thrown off the roof, that's a fantastic scene. He's literally has his hands behind his head, his ankles are crossed. He's falling backwards off the roof with a smile on his face. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. And then later when he swings back up onto the roof, when these guys are fighting Superman, and he's like, "Oh, how's it going?" And Superman says, "They seem pretty angry, as they're punching and kicking and firing energy beams at him," and he's just kind of shrugging it off. And then when an errant energy beam heads toward Nightwing, and he just casually, moves his head to the side.
Yeah.
And then that moment where that guy headbutts Superman, he's like, "Wow, who's stupid enough to headbutt Superman?" It's like, it's just there's so much fun in the book in this interaction between Dick Grayson and John Kent. Which then later kind of pays off when we see how much John really looks up to Dick, so that's fantastic as well. And also a good job from Tom Taylor showing us how John really wears his heart on his sleeve, like even when this guy that headbutts him, that they're going to keep him and interrogate him, and Bendix is like, "No, I'm not going to let that happen." He sets off a bomb planted in this guy's head, a la Amanda Waller. And John just feels so terrible, like the look on his face, and and Dick understands that it's not John's fault at all. But Dick even says, he's like, "I'm not going to tell you to stop feeling guilty because I know that's not going to do any good, because that's who you are, and I understand that." So yeah, there's a lot of almost the whole second half of the book is all kind of emotional moments or setup for what's going forward. I think the most important thing is this idea that Dick Grayson has invested in the truth, and he asks Lois Lane, "It's like, hey, people will they'll give more credence to news or information if there's a face to it as opposed to it being anonymous. And who's more trusted in the DC universe in terms of being a reporter and digging up dirt than Lois Lane? So I think that's an important aspect, and it's going to be I'm going to be curious to see how that plays out. So yeah, fantastic art, a lot of great moments. I selfishly wish that Tom Taylor and Bruno Redondo could do two book. Bruno Redondo could draw 2 books a month, and we could get Taylor and Redondo on both.
Yeah.
Because it's just his art is so fantastic, and I love his rendition of John. Thought it was done really well, also.
Yeah.
Okay, up next we have Naomi season 2, number 1. This is from writers Brian Michael Bendis and David F. Walker. Jamal Campbell does the art. Wes Abbott on letters. This one I enjoyed it. I'm surprised actually that we didn't get more recap of what happened in the first series, because Bendis tends to like to do that. So I'm glad that wasn't the case. Instead, we focused on her moving forward. But again, like a lot of the books, there's not a whole heck of a lot that happens here. Until like the last couple pages. It's a lot of setup, and it's some fallout, some consequences of what Naomi learned about herself in the first series, and kind of the fallout and the way her parents were treating her differently, especially her dad, who's actually a Thanagarian, worked for like Thanagarian intelligence and was sent to Earth a long time ago, and was supposed to be, or I take that back. He's not Thanagarian. He's from Ran. He's the other guy, D, is a Thanagarian. But Naomi's adopted father is from Ran. He's in Ran intelligence, was supposed to be, gathering intelligence for a potential Ran invasion. And so he wants Naomi to understand her powers and her limits and what she can do and what she can't do. But at the end of the day, he's a dad, and his expectations aren't exactly logical. So that's causing some friction. So again, it's a lot of emotional stuff that's going on here in terms of just moving the story forward and us finding out more about Naomi. There's not much here until that other alien that's a part of Naomi's life that is Thanagarian D, who's the town mechanic, disappears at the end of the issue. Was supposed to come over to the McDuffie's house for dinner, didn't show up, and Naomi goes looking. Unbeknownst to her, her dad is there looking as well, and of course that causes friction. What are you doing here? And Naomi's worried that her dad may have had something to do with these disappearance. So there's a little bit of drama and tension, but it doesn't happen until the end. The drama and tension in the majority of the issues is more about kind of emotional drama or family drama. So yeah, if I have any complaint about the Naomi series or her as a character overall, as much as I enjoyed the first series, it moves at a snail's pace, and I think she's an interesting character and she has a lot of potential, but we know so little still. We've talked about this before, how she's been out for like over 2 years now, and we still know so little. And that is what contributes to a feeling sometimes of, yeah, oh, she's a member of the Justice League now. It doesn't feel earned because she hasn't done anything. She hasn't been in enough stuff, but let's put her, and I get it. Like, she's a Bendis creation and Bendis is writing Justice League. So where else is he going to put her? And again, I don't know why it's coming out so slow. If I had to guess, I know Jamal Campbell's not the fastest artist, although his art is gorgeous and beautiful. But if it takes him this long, it makes it feel like it's trickling. We're getting the story at a snail's pace, like I said, and it's frustrating because I want to know more about her. I think she's an interesting character and has a lot of potential. And if from the time that she had come out, if she had just imagine if she had a monthly comic that was up to like issue 27 or whatever by now, we would know so much about her, so much more about her, rather than we still don't know hardly anything. So that's where my frustration. They've created such an interesting character that I want to know more about, but yet it's coming out so slow. So it just feels like really slow paced. So, but I did enjoy it.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, first I have to. I mean, literally right on the very first panel of the very first page, it says, one of Naomi's friends says, it's only been like 3 weeks. And that is ridiculously comical because, okay, we know it's comic book time and we definitely have to suspend our disbelief, but think of everything that Naomi has been through and we as readers have been through since Naomi Volume 1 came out. We've gone through death metal. Naomi has been a member of the Justice League and has fought numerous villains. She's been to her own homeworld already. Her parents have visited the Hall of Justice. They've had adventures there. They've met Justice League Dark. Naomi has battled Xanardoth. Naomi has had all these adventures through Young Justice, through 14 issues of Young Justice. And we are to believe that only 3 weeks have passed while, there's no way that all those events through Checkmate, that only 3 weeks have passed. As a matter of fact, it doesn't add up at all because we know as a fact that almost a year has passed in the transition from Checkmate into the current present incarnation of the Justice League. Nothing.
Yeah, that's assuming that this isn't like maybe this happened before. Again, comic book time. I get it.
Yeah, no.
I'll also mention that we've gone through a whole goddamn pandemic that's killed 6 million people. But yeah, 3 weeks.
Yeah, no,
I agree with you. Yeah,
no question. But I suppose in fairness, there has been some editorial hiccups, between AT&T buying DC, and then we're getting a Discovery acquisition. So there's stuff going on behind the scenes too. But in any event, I actually thought that this was a nice summary of what came before. I actually thought the dialogue was not as. I thought the dialogue was much better than in the first volume. And I like that there's the volume that the exposition and the dialogue doesn't drown out the fantastic art of Jamal Campbell. And even I'm glad that the scene with the psychologist or the counselor that Naomi's talking about her life. I guess that is an effective way to sort of catch readers up, because whether we like it or not, it's been a long time since Volume 1, and I think we got a good job here of getting us up to speed. And, he doesn't spend a lot of time shoving it down our throats, every single aspect of what we already know, because I think Bendis knows that all of us know a lot about Naomi already. And so I kind of like how things are going here. Her father, her wanting to train her, he's Ranian, and we know that his best friend is a Thanagarian. We know that history, and we know that Naomi wants to go and find out more about her past. All that's coming to a head. And, again, stumbling upon at the end of this issue where clearly the Thanagarian, her dad's Thanagarian friend D, somebody she also confides in, he appears to be missing. I think this is a good start. If you've been on board for Naomi Volume 1 and you're a fan of Naomi, this is something we've been waiting for a very long time. And it's nice to finally get it, because even the heaviest detractors of Bendis, and at times I've been that in terms of his work on Superman, the fact of the matter is that I've always wanted to get Volume 2 of Naomi, because I think this is probably his best work at DC. And it is a TV show for a reason, so obviously the powers that be at Warner Brothers have put a lot of faith in the property. And so it's nice to see this Volume 2 come out, and it's a good start to a Volume 2.
Yeah, and she has her own TV show. We forgot to mention that. That also happened in 3 weeks, apparently.
That's exactly right. Pretty good for 3 weeks of work.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and I know it's like Bendis is almost a victim of his own success. He's super busy doing other things besides comics. Like the Legion of Superheroes animated series. So, all right, up next, here's another book that from the beginning I've had some issues with it. But man, have the last 2 issues been good. It's I Am Batman number 7, written by John Ridley. Christian Duce is the artist. Rex Locus on colors. Troy Petrie on letters. I think maybe I just needed Jace Fox to be out of Gotham, be out of the shadow of Batman, because I really like what John Ridley is doing here. Last issue, his first issue in New York, and I don't know if it's Ridley wants to ground it a little more in reality, because it does feel like, based on what we know of the DCU, this would be a little more of how things would be, where the mayor says, no, you're not going to operate, uh, as a vigilante here without some kind of oversight. And so they put him on the payroll. They pay him $1. He gets $1 a year, so they could say he's an employee of the city, and they'll work with him. And obviously, there's a lot of kinks to be ironed out, and it's going to cause some issues. Already, the police commissioner seems like a real prick, and just a you know head in the sand, throw back. This is not the way things are done. It just doesn't. Just a luddite, just somebody who completely doesn't. He only cares about himself. Only cares about his power. Like if you're the police commissioner, don't you want every resource you can to protect the city, protect the citizens? Like, isn't that your job as a police officer? And you're at the top of the heap. But no, he only cares about how it reflects on him. How he's probably corrupt and worried about what this bodes for the future. But I don't know. I just like the tone and the feel. This idea of him working, of Batman, of Jace Fox working with the police department. Now the team that he's been assigned, again, partly due to the fact that the mayor's got involved and he wants to make it look diverse. It's not exactly, and they even comment on it. It's not exactly, New York's finest. They got a woman who's got a ton of HR complaints. They got a guy who has a bunch of excessive force complaints against him. And then they've got, the two detectives, of which Chubb, we saw back in Gotham, and now she's in New York. And man, for as effective as a leader as she is, and as good of a cop as she is, she really complains a lot. She doesn't come across as,
Yeah.
very open-minded here.
She's a
almost to the point
firecracker.
of,
She's quite vocal.
yeah, yeah, almost to the point of disliking her. But to John Ridley's credit and to Chubb's credit, at the end, that already seems to be changing when they do some good work. When Chubb's team, this special something task force, which they call the Bat Task Force, which they don't like being called that. Special Operations Task Force is what they are, but they call them Strike Force Bat, which they kind of resent because they're a lot more than Batman. But yeah, when they actually work with Batman, when Jace Fox gives them some intel and it leads to busting these 6 guys that are dealing a bunch of advanced weapons, then she starts to maybe realize, hey, maybe this is going to work out. So I like that in the course of one issue, we got some growth from Chubb. So yeah, I like the groundedness of it. I like Jace Fox being out of Gotham City, out from under the shadow of Batman, like literally. I like the distinction where he says, "I'm a Batman, not the Batman." It's a way to differentiate. There's still a part of me that does wish that they had called him something else. But at the same time, now that he's kind of out from under Gotham City and in New York and more on his own and feels like more of an independent hero, I'm starting to see more, and I'm coming around more to the idea of him being Batman. Just because of everything that name entails, like the legacy of it, what it represents in terms of, fighting for the underdog and that sort of thing. But I don't know. Part of me wishes maybe that 5G had happened. Like, if we're going to do this, can we take Bruce Wayne off the table? But at the same time, that feels like it's been done so many times, whether it's Nightfall or Battle for the Cowl or whatever, Batman RIP. So I don't know. I think John Ridley's doing the best with the hand he's dealt, and I really enjoyed this. And I also thought the Christian Duce art was really fantastic, especially the color work. Much like the Batman movie, which took place mostly at night. I expect this story to take mostly at night, take place mostly at night. It's a Batman comic. I did see some reviews about the Batman that people were complaining, God, it's so dark. Why is it nighttime all the time? Have you never? It's Batman. He goes out at night. It's Batman. Like, what are you talking about? You expect him to be out in the middle of the day? What's going on here? So anyway, I enjoyed this. I'm much more on board with this series. The last couple issues have been fantastic. What do you think?
The final page reveal about this new character, Man Ray, I'm assuming that's his name. He looks pretty cool. Looks interesting. Very interesting. Christian,
that iron with nails in it he has.
Yeah, he looks deadly. He looks pretty kick-ass. Definitely, he looks like a character you'd normally expect to see in Gotham. But like Detective Chubb says to Batman Jace in this issue, she bugs him, saying, you arrive in New York City and suddenly we get all this Gotham-like scum. Is that a coincidence? Come on. In any event, it's I I like this. The rapport between Detective Chubbs, the dialogue between Detective Chubb and Batman, the back and forth was excellent. The opening issue, Detective Chubb, her partner Detective Whitaker, Mike Tanaka and Michonne Mueller are the other people part of this Strike Force Bat Task Force. Commissioner Beckett. Clearly, John Ridley is doing something different than the relationship between Commissioner Gordon and Batman in Gotham City is very close knit. At least when Jim Gordon was commissioner. The relationship between Batman, Jace, and Commissioner Beckett in New York City, there isn't one. Commissioner Beckett resents the fact he's old school. He doesn't think they should be working with Batman. He's against it. Mayor Villanueva is the one that wants it. She's pushing it. I find it very interesting that they're putting Batman on the payroll and just paying him $1 a year. And just a little bit of a legal note here, which might play, I don't know how familiar John Ridley is with the law, but whenever you become an agent of the state, you have an obligation to implement due process when you apprehend criminals. Because if you're an agent of the state, you got to follow the Constitution. You got to follow the laws. You can get away with a lot more when you're a vigilante and you're not an agent of the state, arguably. You can't do that if you're an actually agent of the state. And if you're paid $1, suddenly then, Batman just attacking and assaulting criminals and hitting first, that can be very problematic. I'm not trying to get too much into the law on that, but, there's a lot of different ways. That can be a serious hindrance and a potential defense to any villains in New York City should Jace ever apprehend them. So that's just the lawyer side of me sort of thinking this might be kind of cool. I've always enjoyed Daredevil that way, the way that different writers have brought in criminal justice elements in Daredevil. We might get more of it here in Batman, who knows, with John Ridley. It's worth noting that we finally get some dialogue with a character we've never heard from before in terms of dialogue, and that is Tammy Fox, who is recovering finally from being in a coma, recovering from fear state. She's in a conversation with her sister, Tammy and Tiffany. And it's clear. So, I mean, Ridley is developing that relationship as Tammy recovers. Tiffany has some issues with her brothers, I think, both Luke and Jace. And Tammy you get the sense that Tammy's a little bit more optimistic, perhaps the younger, more naive one. And anyways, I'm looking more, I'm interested to see where John Ridley takes that. Tanya Fox, the mother, still doesn't really like Batman, doesn't know that her son is Batman, doesn't really like Task Force Batman, but she'll accept it if it's going to get things done. I agree with you. This is a great setup for Batman moving forward. This doesn't feel like a Batman. This does not feel like a Batman analog to me. This feels like a different Batman, and I like it. He's starting to develop. He is his own Batman, and that's what I like about it. And I even like there's a degree of humility here on the part of Jace Fox Batman by saying, I am not the Batman. I'm a Batman. I'm not the Batman, as you stated. And I think it works very well. And the art by Christian Duce it really is fantastic. So this is so much better than those earlier issues. This is so much better, these last two issues, than the whole year previous of this next Batman. So I'm quite happy with this as well.
Yeah, I really think they just needed to get him out of Gotham. Just let him be out there on his own, doing his own thing.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, last book we're going to talk about on this one. We are going to do a special Trial of the Amazons episode. So if you're tuning in for that, go check out that separate one. But it's Superman versus Lobo, book 3. Now, in fairness, this is really late. There were some editorial issues, paper shortage, whatnot. This was actually supposed to come out in December, so I had to go back and reread issue 2 to remember what the heck was going on. But this is written by Tim Seeley and Sarah Beatty. Mirka Andolfo does the art, Eric Prianto on colors, Fabio Amelia on letters. And I should also mention that I got a chance to talk to Tim Seeley, and that episode is dropping today as well. We talked about Superman versus Lobo, as well as Robins and some of his other work that he has coming out right now. So this was a really good balance between these two characters who are really philosophically on opposite ends of the spectrum. What'd you think of how this wrapped up, Rocky?
I liked it. As I said, Tim Seeley surprised me. Up until him doing Superman v Lobo, And even a little bit with his Robins, I didn't think I never thought of the guy as being particularly good at humor. But he made me laugh. He made me openly laugh at parts in this entire three-book narrative. I want to give a shout out to this one cover here. This looks like Daniel Warren Johnson's art. Um, um, Anyways, it's
It is,
fantastic.
yeah,
It has Lobo with chains
it is.
wrapped around Superman's neck. Is it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is
Yeah.
Daniel Warren Johnson.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. It just reminds me of his work on Wonder Woman Dead Earth. It looks really, really good. But in any event, Mirko Andolfo, the artist throughout this series, it works quite well here. What stands out for me in this final issue is the finally. I mean, this issue, the central conceit of this narrative is Superman essentially being on Zarnia, and in the past, which was the planet that Lobo ultimately destroyed, his own home planet, and then Lobo being on Krypton, sent back to Krypton, of course, Superman's planet. Both were planets that were ultimately doomed for destruction, and through an extraordinary series of events, they end up back on each other's planets. And uh, in many ways, Lobo makes fun of Superman here in this issue because he brags about how much better it was when Lobo did things his way, and of course he makes kind of embarrasses and humiliates Superman through the dialogue, and then Superman turns the tables on him, and I think that there's sort of you can kind of see both sides of the story, and they both end up ultimately being, well, Lobo very reluctantly. Lobo will never admit anything, but there's a tacit amount of respect there. Tim Seeley does a really good job here of nailing the characters of Lobo and Superman. Lobo was unapologetically Lobo. That's what Tim Seeley understands so well. He's unapologetically Lobo. He even charges for it. I mean, he even charges a woman here for his time and for helping her out, and he does so unapologetically. And of course, Superman is unapologetically Superman. And these two very, very different moral compasses collide catastrophically in this series to comedic effect, but also with a lesson to be had. And again, I actually, maybe it's just because I'm finally getting used to Marco Andolfo's art, because it is something that had to grow on me. It's I know she is it a he or a she, Mirko?
It's a she.
It's a she. Thank you. I assume that, but I screwed up the gender last time we did a review. So, anyways, but it's grown on me because I wasn't initially a fan of this particular style, but it suits this, and it took a while for me to get used to it, but I enjoyed it. This is lots of I like there was the appearance of Zealot here was quite good. We got like the old Wildcats and Maul and Union and Hellspawn. And this is it definitely sort of a 90s feel to it with some of these characters. A lot of violence, of course, typical Lobo violence. Look, if you're a fan of Lobo, I say again, I've said when we reviewed the first two issues, this is something that you're going to enjoy. And it's got my recommendation. I do think I'm probably going to pick this up in hardcover because I enjoy it. I enjoy it that much. It kind of makes me want to have a Lobo series, and I with just Lobo, and I say that with all due respect to Crush. While I didn't mind Lobo and Crush with that series by Marika Tamaki, I'm a Lobo fan. What can I say? And what do you think of this?
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. And again, I encourage everybody to go listen to the conversation I had with Tim Seeley about what he was trying to do here, in case it's not clear. And Tim and I talked about how 90s of a character Lobo is and how popular he was. And he reiterated that Lobo is a villain at the end of the day. The guys that created him didn't create him to be a hero or even an anti-hero. But the thing is, it's almost like, in a way, what the 90s were, the way comics almost steered into who Lobo was, in the 90s, when everything was dark and gritty and everybody was an anti-hero. And all of a sudden, Lobo was very much kind of the poster child for that. And that's what's happening here. Like Rocky said, Lobo, he meets up with all these, and it was great to see all these last sons, Hellspawn and Zealot and Maul and everybody. And Lobo, he takes the power of the little being that is sort of the reason that all this madness has been happening. And he creates his own kind of Lobo universe. You know, he goes back to that quote unquote Wildstorm universe, and trying to teach Superman a lesson. And it's the same lesson he was trying to teach in the first issue when he took over the Lexer app, the social media app that Lex Luthor had created and was bad mouthing Superman. It's that, like Rocky was saying, when Lobo was on Krypton, people don't want to be good. That's too hard to make good choices and to be morally right. They want to just do whatever the hell they want to do, and sin and be corrupt and whatever. And so that's the universe that Lobo creates when he gets the power to do so. And then guess what? It doesn't really work out quite the way he thinks it will. And for maybe the first time ever, and there's a version of Batman in that universe that shows up, and he's like, Lobo admitting he was wrong. Wait, where did that ever? And then he disappears. So, yeah, I mean, this very much, if you're a Superman fan, this very much is kind of almost Tim Seeley putting a stamp of approval on who Superman is, in terms of Superman is, like Rocky said, unapologetically the good guy. That's what makes him super. It's not his powers. And again, it's a little tropey and it's a little cliche because the story's been told before. It's not the actual superpowers that make Superman who he is. It's his desire to help everybody all the time and to always make the right choice. That's who Superman is. And at the end of the day, that's the lesson that Lobo learns. But does he really learn it? Because he ends up coming back to our universe and deciding to start a podcast universe where he's going to badmouth Batman. So the whole idea of, Batman eats babies from the whole Tom King, Mitch Gerard's Mr. Miracle run. Yeah, now Lobo's spreading the rumor that Superman eats babies. So yeah, again, a lot of fun, a lot of humor. I agree with you about the Mirko Andolfo art. It works here, but this is not the style of art I'm used to seeing from her. Usually her style's a little more cartoony, a little more animated style, a little more cutesy and sexy. So this was a departure, but yeah, it definitely works for the series. So yeah, it worked, and I agree with you that this was a really, really great series. And again, I can't stress her, but go listen to me talk to Tim about it, because we talked about this. We talked about the King Shark series. We talked about Robbins. We talked about his campaign he has going on for the first thing he ever did, called Hell Bunny and Mr. Hell, which was a creator own. There's a Zoop campaign running right now. And then we also talked a little bit about Loaded Bible. So go check it out. So again, that's it for the single issues we're going to talk about here. Go listen to our Trial of the Amazons episode if you want to hear about Nubia and the Amazons issue 6 and Trial of the Amazons number 1. Also, I want to mention, out from DC today, there's a couple of collections. We have The Conjuring, The Lover hardcover. Also DC poster portfolio with a bunch of Dark Knight's metal pinups. There's Superman and the Legion of Superheroes tabloid edition hardcover. There is a Noon Teen Titans Volume 13 trade paperback, which is still reprinting a lot of the Marv Wolfman, George Perez stuff. There's Teen Titans Academy Volume 1 hardcover, which, your mileage may vary, but Rocky and I aren't big fans of that, but it is out. Also, Green Arrow Stranded trade paperback, which is, I think it's one of those young adult trade paperback, so you can check that out. And then finally, Action Comics Volume 1 Warworld Rising trade paperback, which collects the first arc of Philip Kennedy Johnson's run on Action Comics. So a lot of collections out today. And again, Trial of the Amazons kicks off as well. Go check out our spotlight on that. Anything you want to tease, other content you have coming out, Rocky, before we sign off here?
No, not at this time. I got some rant and rave videos I'm thinking about, but nothing in particular. I did a Batman. I basically ranted against the Batman movie, which I saw on the weekend, and not a it wasn't my cup of tea, so I let go, and it was very therapeutic for me. And people, if they want to see me at my ranting worst or best, depending on your point of view, you can check that out.
Yeah, speaking of best, Rocky and I also finally got our best of 2021 out.
That's
Better
right.
better late than never.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun to go back and talk about some of the best series. So we pick our winners, but we also mention a lot of other really worthy titles and creators that had work come out in 2021. So go listen to that if you are looking for some new stuff or some older stuff, stuff that's available either on the DC Universe app or Marvel Comics Unlimited. You can get it for cheaper. You're looking for stuff to read that's new to you, definitely go and check that out. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Don't forget to head over to Rocky's YouTube channel. Just do a search for Comic Space Boom ! Like this video, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when new content comes out. Also, be sure you're subscribed to The Comic Source on whatever podcasting app or podcasting platform you prefer, so you don't miss any of our audio-only content that's coming out, like our Spawn Daily and a lot of the interviews I'm doing. J.H. Williams interview dropped yesterday talking about Echo Lands. He's a fantastic artist. It was so fun to talk to him. Echo Lands is landscape rather than portrait orientation, and there's a lot of things you don't think about when that's going on. Plus, just all the inspirations, things from the Terminator to Shogun Warriors are inspirations for that book. It's so much fun, and it was just fantastic. One of the most fun interviews I've done in a while, talking to JH. So definitely go and check it out. So that's going to do it for this one, everybody. We appreciate you listening as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
See you later.